when they say people are lucky, it's because they have been working really hard for that opportunity.
It's true.
Right. And another thing I would say is networking is key.
Hmm.
Even though I know in Africa, we say, oh, it's important to network. More so here as well. It's global.
It's
And one thing I would recommend is just like insurance, get your insurance before you really need it. That's the same thing as networking. So
yes.
establish your network of contacts before you really need it, because once you're established, you don't want to start looking for people to network with when you really need them.
Right.
Particularly.
That will come across as fake, right?
Exactly, that you're just looking for something.
Yes.
So when you establish that and you keep it active and relevant, it will be very helpful, and you'll be able to get quick responses whenever it is that you really need it as well. Right. And hopefully you're able to do the same for other people who come around.
Awesome. All right. Welcome to this episode. In this episode, we are going to have an amazing discussion, and it's going to be something different than what we're used to. We're used to talking to a lot of male professionals, and this is the first time we're going to be talking to an amazing lady, and her name is called Ayo Adeyemi. Yes, so it is amazing. And Ayo works with a company, one of the top 5, I think, in my view, one of the top 5 pharmaceutical companies in the world. None other than a company called Sanofi, right? I don't know if my pronunciation is right, but that's how I call it. Yes, so one of the top pharmacy companies in the world, and these guys, they save lives. They make a ton of money, but they save a lot of lives. So, Ayo, welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, just to tee it up, Ayo works as a director. As the director of real world evidence, right? And she's going to talk about what that means, because that's a lot of big English. So she's going to, I'm just going to give her a platform to explain what that means to us shortly. So Ayo, if you don't mind, just share a little bit snippet of what you do, your current role, and I'll sort of tee it up again to a lot of sort of dig a little bit into what you do, so that the ordinary person on the street can understand.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. I'm happy to do that, and happy to be here as well. Awesome. So my role at Sanofi, as you said, is I'm part of the real world evidence team, and what our work is centered around is evidence generation to essentially support our external stakeholders. When we say stakeholders, we mean physicians, to be able to make informed decisions in treating their patients. So, like you said, we have a number of pharmaceutical companies out there, and many companies develop products that do the same thing, similar things. And so when you present different products or different medicines to the doctor to treat a patient that has, for example, malaria, the physician needs to know, why do I pick A above B? What are the differentiating factors that would make me pick A instead of B? And so when we talk about external stakeholders, not just the physicians, we're also looking at the payers. Here in the United States, it's we have the commercial payers in insurance companies.
Insurance companies.
Yes.
Okay.
So they essentially take they account for majority of the patient's medical bill. And so whenever a treatment, which could be medical device, and you had talked about Vizient. So
yes.
I had worked with medical device in the past, so I know quite a bit about Vizient as well. So
awesome.
Right. So whether it's medical device or a product, something that has therapeutic value, the stakeholders, whether the physician or the payers, need to understand why we should pick A over B. And so this is where my job comes in, to be able to present the evidence to let them know, compared to based on our studies that we have done, based on data real world data specifically in this case, we can show that we are maybe more cost effective. We have evidence to show that your using medications will help your patients maybe get better faster, less side effects, and may also be costs more pocket friendly versus the competition. So in a nutshell, I would say that that is essentially what my work is all about.
Wow, that is incredible. So but then I believe that one of your key, especially in the US, your key stakeholder is going to be Medicare, Medicaid. Or
I would say one of them. They are one of our stakeholders. Yes. So we have Medicaid, Medicare are the you'll say kind of public, government. Yes, government sponsored. Where we have commercial. Commercial is actually quite a big one. Where we have the private payers.
Yes.
Taking care of that.
Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Amazing. Wow. So this is incredible. So I remember when I worked at Medasets, I think at that time I wasn't involved in that team, but there was a team that was working on pulling clinical data or sifting through clinical data to come up with some kind of some kind of efficacy and medical outcomes and those kind of things. I wasn't too sure about what the team did. I just knew that something like that was going on. I believe that the insurance companies, in this case, the payers, they really wanted that information from a medical devices standpoint. So how do you, or how does your team gather that evidence? So my understanding is, let's pick a patient who, let's say, is taking, say, type 2 diabetes medication. And as I understand, there are so many different types of medications out there. And so how does your team work to collect that evidence? Do you phone up the patients, or you send them questionnaires, or how do you gather that and then probably stick it side by side with other manufacturers?
That's a great question. So I will address your question, assuming that this is a medication already in the market that has passed approval, the regulatory approval and all that. Now we have our products in the market, and like you said, type 2 diabetes, there are so many medications to treat or to manage type 2 diabetes. We have our product. We could do different things. If we don't have a lot of data out there. So when we talk about real world evidence, is how patients would use the medication in the real world. So not being under scrutiny or under supervision by a clinical trial team. And just the regular patient going to the doctor to have their prescription order written and being filled by the pharmacy. And now because they have insurance, that is usually they have to go through insurance for approval. So they usually have reimbursement. And so we have claims data for those patients. So imagine that we have claims data for millions of patients.
Yes.
We have access to those kind of data sets and then design our study. We want to be able to see. When we talk about real world evidence, this time around, we're looking at effectiveness. Efficacy would have to be when you're actually doing clinical trials.
Okay.
So for real world evidence is looking at effectiveness and trying to see. We have our medications. What are those markers that we use to say that a medication is effective? So if you say type 2 diabetes, we are looking at their A1C levels. We are looking at some biomarkers in their body. There, everything about them. Those are things we want to be able to see. I think it's been a while I worked on diabetes, so I think it is the standard is 7%. Less than 7%, which is essentially their blood glucose level.
Sugar. Okay.
Yes. And so to be able to see how much it controls their blood sugar, as you would say, and also to be able to see there are other things that are associated with diabetes. Are you able to control that? Not only that, diabetes is a chronic disease. Patients would have to take it for a long time.
Yes.
Are they able? Side effects. Are they able to tolerate it? How many times a day do they take it? Is it 3 times? If our medication is once a day, that is a plus for us because that means a patient would likely want to take a medication once a day rather than 3 times a
Three
day.
times, yes, definitely.
Right. So less side effects. And so we want to see, one outcome we want to see maybe adherence. So if a patient stays longer on our medication and we're able to tie it to better outcomes, which is their A1C levels, we'll look at the claims data. Look at, because in the claims data, you're able to see what diseases, competing diseases that they have, what issues that the patient has, and for us to be able to take care of any kind of bias. So we don't want it to be that our drug, we are focusing on patients that are not very sick.
Okay.
And then for the competitor, we are using the very sick ones. It will almost
Yes.
look like we are
Yes,
not
comparing apples to oranges then.
Exactly. So we'll have to make sure we are taking care of things, we call it at baseline. So before we even start, when we identify our patients, are they comparable before we start doing the evaluation? And so there are things that we usually have to take into account: age, the gender, race, some other things that we need to consider, and then how sick the patients are before we start doing the comparison in terms of side effects, adherence, and if they have complications down the line. I hope I did not. Was that it?
It's wonderful. It's you could see that the question was loaded, so the answer is also loaded. and I really appreciate your answer. I think what is going to be interesting is I'm just assuming that almost all the pharmaceutical your competitors will be doing something similar, right? Or am I wrong? Because if you are the only one doing it, then you have enormous competitive advantage. You just walk into a doctor's office and you present your data, and it's a slam dunk. It's like they're going to be writing your prescribing your products all day long. But I could see that there could be some competition out there if everyone is doing something similar.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes. Everyone needs to. All the companies are fighting for that advantage. So you'll see that it's actually a crowded market where everyone is using the databases and all. So I assume the question is, how do you differentiate yourself?
Right.
And this is where the quality of your studies come into play. When we present our evidence to those who are going to evaluate it, they have to look at it objectively, and they begin to ask questions. And the questions will be things that would help them understand whether or not you were objective in your assessment.
Yes.
So, for example, I had said that you're looking at 2 products. You want to compare them. Are you looking at them comparing comparable patients, similar patients between the 2 groups? Have you accounted for any form of bias in the process? So it is usually painstaking. It is usually rigorous. Many people may not want to go through that. Sometimes the results don't look like what you would want them to look like. But the result is what the result is. So that is another reason why people go to the drawing board to say, what is it that we need to do differently? We don't have enough data. If we don't have enough data, we can't tell the true picture, tell the true story, the big story, what we want to be able to tell. That is when we have to see how we can generate more data. Sometimes we do things like prospective studies, where we start the studies ourselves and then watch the patients over time as they take the medications to see their outcomes. So there are different ways researchers work to be sure that they produce very high quality studies. And so it is now left to the evaluators to be able to really compare the results, the evidence, and to see, to be able to make the assessment.
That's an interesting point, because I was just going to, right before you said, I was going to ask that normally when you present your findings or you present your data, is it peer reviewed by probably an independent body or that kind of thing to give it more credibility?
Absolutely. So for more often than not, when we conclude studies after execution, we have them submitted in international conferences, and this have to go through peer review, the peer review process, and also if you want to publish. Everything has to go through the peer review process, and it's usually very rigorous. And if it has to be high quality for it to be accepted in the first place. So that you have it accepted is also foolproof that you actually did a good job.
Yes.
And be ready to also defend it and during your presentation at conferences as well.
Amazing. Wow. This is mind blowing. Yeah, it's, I'll come to this question later on, that you're a pharmacist by training, and typically when you see pharmacists, maybe I'll just ask this question and then we'll move to the next segment. So you're a pharmacist by training, but basically most people see pharmacists, right? Especially in the context of retail pharmacy. So how did you land, or how did you choose this field, or how did you get to where you are? It's fascinating because I see a lot of retail pharmacy. There's no to me, I say it in a very respectful way. It's not a bad option, but 99.9% of the time, that's what I see. So seeing other people who can veer into other areas in pharmacy actually intrigues me. So can you educate me a little bit on what the options are, when it comes to pharmacy?
So Isaac, I think you raise a great point. And I will say that 20 years ago, I would have said I would have my own pharmacy. That was my goal, to have my own retail pharmacy. There are so many other options. Mm-hmm. Even back home, you're able to, outside of retail, you could work in the hospital if you wanted to work in the hospital, work in research organizations. So I know that back home, the options may not be as broad as you have in here, where you can work for regulatory bodies, we work for FDA, work for pharmaceutical companies, could also be in academia, which is also an option back home in Africa. So there are different options you can. It's just that most people think that it's retail pharmacy.
Yes.
But with the pharmacy degree, I would say that pharmacists are very well equipped to be able to diversify. You just need to be able to understand what your interests are, the opportunities that are open to you, and to be able to leverage those.
Amazing.
So that is
amazing. Awesome. So now let's get into some more fun stuff. The fun stuff is, how did our sister Ayo, how's your background like? How did you grow up? I know probably you're not you didn't just got thrown into you're born and then raised with silver spoon in your mouth, and then all of a sudden you found yourself working for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, in the United States. Your journey probably started somewhere. So can you tell us some of your fun stories, growing up and as a girl? Yes, as a girl. Tell us some of the wonderful stories and any painful twists or interesting angles. We would love to know about them.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. So I was born and raised in Nigeria.
Okay.
And my
Ghana and Nigeria jollof, I was going to say.
Oh, we don't want to go there yet. We don't want to go there. Yeah. So my elementary school and high school, which we call secondary school, were all spent in the northern part of Nigeria. Wow. Because my parents were working there then. And then after that, we moved to the Southwest, and I started college, where I went to pharmacy school.
Okay.
And in pharmacy, well, what informed my going to being a pharmacist? I always wanted to be a lawyer for some reason.
Wow.
And I think they said my parents thought I was very good at being able to make my case.
Okay, to speak for yourself.
I called. That's what they said, actually, and thought that it wouldn't be bad for me to go into law. But over time, I got fascinated with the profession pharmacy. I didn't have anyone close per se that guided that decision. However, I loved it, and I had time to kind of know a little bit more about it. And so I got into pharmacy school. That was Obafemi Awolowo University.
Okay, very good school, I hear.
Yes.
Very, very, what do you call it? It's a very famous school, let me put it that way.
Famous and very good, actually. Not just, yes. It's known for its quality, I would say. Yeah. So in pharmacy school, went through the motions as usual, was tedious, as any pharmacist would tell. And after graduating, my thoughts before graduating was that my main aim was to be able to own my own pharmacy.
Okay.
And I had worked a couple years in retail pharmacy. So, worked in, quite frankly, I had done retail pharmacy during my internships.
Okay.
And then I worked a couple years in the hospital pharmacy setting.
All right.
And during that time, I wasn't sure if that was what I wanted. And it happened that my husband, who was my fiance then,
Okay.
also a pharmacist and was way ahead of me in the in the profession, was going to come abroad to study.
Okay.
And he was interested in health economics and outcomes research. And so he had come, and I was like, okay, so when you get back, we're going to just settle down here and all that. Yes. But he started explaining to me what HOR is, what we usually call it. It's health economics and outcomes research. And started explaining to me what HOR was about. And I started reading more about it. Okay. And with that, I began to look at my patients in a different light. Okay. The patients would say they didn't want this medication because they weren't seeing it working. For example, type 2 diabetes, it is asymptomatic until it gets to a really bad stage. So patients really don't know the damage that's being done internally until it's gone to a really bad state. And back home, it didn't look as if there was a lot of emphasis on differentiating your medicines from competition. So essentially, the cheapest is what we want.
Everybody goes for the cheapest.
Exactly. And so with that point that had been raised to me by my fiance, then I began to do a little bit more research, and I began to look at my patients a little bit differently. And afterwards, I said, you know what, I think I want to do something like that as well. I did a bit more research and did the application into the schools that were best able to provide a program there, and got into the school. So we did all the submissions and all, got into the school and got the training. So master's and PhD in HOR. And in the process, I had exposure to working with different kinds of people. So working with research organizations, working with payers as well. Yes. From the angle of which they wanted to generate evidence to be able to. Sometimes it's not even to differentiate their products from other products. It's essentially to understand their own patient population. Okay. To see if they have more patients who are suffering from a particular disease or something, so they can know what kind of medication to bring into their formulary and all that. So those are examples of ways. That's another way that pharmacists can work, because even as an intern then, I was working with pharmacists who were working in that insurance payer system, I would say. And so fast forward, graduated and started working for medical device, also in the capacity of health outcomes, and being able to, this time around, was looking at it from the medical device aspect. I worked with Smith and Nephew. I don't know if you're...
I know Smith and Nephew quite well. When I was at Medicine, we did a contract with them. We used to do, actually it was orthopedics.
Yes.
So they were competing with Stryker and Zimmer and a few others. So I kind of know. I even remember my one of their vice presidents of sales in North America quite well, Dean Lucky.
That's great.
So it's quite a huge company. We did a huge orthopedics agreement with Smith and Nephew. They were not the easiest to negotiate with, but they're a big company.
Right.
Yes.
And so you see, even though it was health outcomes, this is medical device, and I've been doing pharma as well. It's essentially the same goal of generating evidence to support the values of your product. Yes. And like you said, I had worked in orthopedics where I supported total joint replacement, products for total joint replacement, and also a product called Coblation for tonsillectomy for children who had issues with their tonsils. Essentially, to be able to let people know that the work I did was to help compare versus the standard of care. So you had asked, there are so many products in the market. More often than not, the regulators want to know how you compare versus the standard of care. So what everyone already knows that this works. How are you better than that standard of care? So in Smith and Nephew and in my current role as well and previous roles, essentially be able to present it in a very objective and scientific way that is beyond all kind of doubt, I would say, and you're able to present it objectively.
Wow. This is amazing. It's like a whole new world I didn't know existed. So let me just take a step back a little bit. We're just going to take a little bit step back. So would you say your choice of going into maybe pharmacy was just possibly maybe a visit probably you may have had as a little girl to a pharmacy shop, and it just left something inside you that you couldn't really place a finger on? Because sometimes people do things for interesting reasons. It's like typically a girl will say, okay, I want to be a doctor. What made you want to choose pharmacy and not choose being a doctor?
That's great. Growing up, they always thought I was the one who always wanted to take care of the little kids. Like my siblings, I was the one in all the family pictures. I was the one always carrying the little baby and wanting to make everybody feel okay. And medicine was something that they had asked me, do you want to study medicine? I was like, no, I really want to learn more about the drugs. And the thing again is, with pharmacy, not only do you understand the formulation, I thought it was really interesting and I thought it was challenging. Not only do you look at the drugs, you look at also how it is formulated. Our training is such that you're able to understand the whole process, not from when you do the formulation, how you do it up to the point that it's a finished product for the user to have. One other thing I thought about as pharmacy is that as a pharmacist, not just retail, if I work in pharma and I'm able to present anything, I'm affecting millions of people all at once. My work is able to contribute.
It's true.
Rather than do, especially even with COVID and everything that is going on. I met pharmacy as a profession that you're able to turn around a lot of lives. I look at in Sanofi where I am at. I'm focused on rare blood disorders. And the other day we had a patient come to us. And he essentially let us know that without this company would be dead because it took them 15 years diagnosis of what and helped him really identify what the issue was. And that if the company had not invested in doing this kind of disease, he would be dead by now. And the fact that so many other patients would be was something very humbling.
Wow. That is incredible. That is incredible. Wow. So my next question basically is going to be that for the program, the health economics and outcomes research, right? I'm still learning. This is a fascinating area for me. HEOR, right? It's a fascinating thing that I'm just fascinated about, basically. How does somebody get into such a program? Do you necessarily have to be a pharmacist or to come from a pharmacy background or medically inclined background, maybe a doctor or pharmacist or maybe, I don't know, maybe a radiographer, whatever it is? What steps or what do you need to get into that program?
Right. You don't necessarily have to be a pharmacist to be in the program. Now, I would say that in my experience, we have many pharmacists in the program. However, we had other people from sociology in the program. As long as to meet the basic requirements. Work experience counts as well. So anything that is able to show your research experience or your exposure as well as interest, passion for the field would help you. So looking at the requirements that the admissions office ask for, pharmacy is not mandatory to be considered.
That's a good compliment, though. If you have that pharmacy background and have this HEOR background, it's like, wow, it's like putting fire on, putting kerosene on fire.
Well, you could say that you don't necessarily have to have had formal HEOR training.
Okay.
Having being able to package your admissions package such that it essentially they expect you to look at what they require and meet it. And one thing I'll say is very important, outside of your grades, your GRE scores, you have to do all of those TOEFL, test of English, GRE and all that. You meet all the requirements. Having a strong statement of purpose.
Okay.
Good, because that is when it reflects where you're coming from, where you're at, and what you're looking to do or get out of the program. That usually just really packs a punch when you're able to submit a very strong statement of purpose as well.
Wow, that is amazing. That's amazing. So I'm actually just going to throw this in there and probably draw your mind a little bit back before we put a final lid on this discussion.
Sure.
What do you think the strength of HEOR as a career path for us? Let me see. Yeah, as an option or as a field of study, as it relates to developing countries, has it made any footprint at all, or is greenfield or non-applicable at the moment? What do you think?
I will say that in Africa, it is really budding. It's really in the infant stage. So we have this global society called ISPOR.
Okay.
It's a society for professional society for health economics and outcomes research, where we have global representation, and which we have a few representatives from Africa. I had met a few of them personally in one of the conferences. Okay. So, but if people who are interested can go through to the website, that's called ISPOR, ISPOR.
ISPOR. Okay.
But yes, and are able to get a sense of it. But asking in terms of how far Africa has gone with HEOR, I would say that not yet. Africa is not yet there. Developing countries are not yet there.
Right. I just was going to default in thinking that way because most of the medical device companies and pharmaceutical companies, Africa is not where they make their money. So Africa is where they do a little bit charity here and there.
Right. And if I must say, we are still of the mindset in Africa that maybe the cheapest is the best. And so when you talk about HEOR, we're not looking necessarily at the cheapest, it's the most cost effective.
Yes.
And so it will be more effective and more expensive. However, there's a trade-off. And that is what the payers are looking for to make their informed decision. The clinicians are looking for effectiveness. So being able to balance those are things that we are not looking at in Africa at this point in time.
Not at all.
I hope we get at some point, but not there yet.
Yes, I think me too. I joined my hope with yours because a little bit of experiences that I've seen so far. It's not very encouraging. It's not very encouraging at all. Yeah, I think in your world, we can. I think gradually it's getting to some kind of personalized healthcare. Right. But over here it's like. Cookie cutter kind of thing that goes on. So,
right.
Yeah. So awesome. So I want you to just give as a little bit of advice. Let's say I'm a young man, I'm a young lady, particularly young ladies that are looking to pursue the track or the journey that you've taken. I know it's been painstaking, it's been long. You have gleaned diverse levels of experiences, and both good and bad, and both sweet and sour. You've gone through that, and you have your family as well, balancing family, studies, career, and everything. Are there nuggets that you can share with our up and coming young people, particularly ladies, that you have picked up over the years?
Absolutely. So looking back through the years and over time, I would say one thing that people would consider you lucky sometimes or blessed. And one thing others have said commonly is luck. When you say luck, is opportunity meeting preparation.
Yes.
So you are prepared and the opportunity comes and it just locks in. Wow. And before you get to that point, being able to position yourself in terms of degree, college degree, a strong college degree, because in the package, they place some emphasis on your GPA.
Okay.
How the scores are and because you have many people from all around the world applying for the same position, limited number of seats. Yes. And you've been able to differentiate yourself from the pack, from your college degree and your statement of purpose, like I had said, your package as a whole is something. And in life overall, I will say that when they say people are lucky, it's because they have been working really hard preparing for that opportunity.
It's true.
Right. And another thing I would say is networking is key. Even though I know in Africa, we say, it's important to network. More so here as well. It's global. And one thing I would recommend is just like insurance, get your insurance before you really need it. That's the same thing as networking. So establish your network of contacts before you really need it, because once you're established, you don't want to start looking for people to network with when you really need them.
Right.
Particularly.
That will come across as fake, right?
Exactly, that you're just looking for something.
Yes.
So when you establish that and you keep it active and relevant, it will be very helpful, and you'll be able to get quick responses whenever it is that you really need it as well. Wow. And hopefully you're able to do the same for other people who come around for you.
Yes.
So those two main things, and I'm a believer of, I don't know if for people who believe in a higher being, I'm a believer that once you do your part and you leave the rest for God, God takes care of the rest for you. Absolutely. But you know that you've covered your own grounds, and just let Him take care of everything else. Awesome. It's not easy. It may not be easy, but the common thing again they say is that when the tough gets going. When it gets tough, or it's the tough that gets going, right?
Awesome.
Yes. So just keeping at it. It's not always a bed of roses, but it's not also a thorn. It's not a thorns all through as well. So it's being able to navigate and not giving up despite challenges. Challenges may be used as stepping stones onto higher ground. So those are my
nuggets. Yes. Wow. That is amazing. That's amazing. We are so honored to have you. And these nuggets are going to be the savior for somebody. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak to us. We are most grateful. And we would love to send you the testimonies as they come from people who watch this episode.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my story as well. And I commend you for the great job you're doing, Isaac.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to call you Dr. Ayo then.
Ayo is fine.
Okay, so some people are very picky with their titles, so okay. So thank you so much once again for your time, and we just enjoyed this session. So for my audience, if you found this episode to be very relevant and useful to you, subscribe to this channel. Period, because this is exactly what you're going to be getting all the time. All right. Thank you, Ayo, and we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Isaac.
Okay.
Have a good one. Thank
All
you.
right, you too. Bye.
Bye.